CJ Walker. Um, CJ, if maybe you just want to introduce yourself to the audience and then we'll jump into how we got here.
What's up, everyone? My name's CJ. I went to school with Dylan at George Mason, where we both majored in government. And yeah, now this is a full circle moment.
Where are you from?
Virginia.
All right, so to set this scene a little bit, you texted me probably a month ago at like midnight,
Yeah.
and your midnight text is, "I have a serious question. Did did going to George Mason or leaving Vermont or anything like that change your perspective on how you see the world? Basically, like how has being and living in different environments changed how you see people and the world around you?" And I didn't really give you a response because I was like, it's midnight. That's a big question,
Yeah.
but it would make a good podcast. So, how did that pop into your head? And then we can start to flesh it out.
Okay, yeah. So, as you know, I am getting my master's degree in political science, applying to PhD programs this fall. My area of research, well, widely, but like to condense it, I focus on like how like tangible identity, how that influences how individuals come to like understand the world and their place in it. So, to give an example, a black individual from Mississippi might have a different worldview of how this person, how they interpret the world, not just America, but the world at large, compared to a black person in New York, right? The same could be said about you and me. You know, we're from two separate regions of the country, though we both went to the same institution for higher ed for our bachelor's degree. We have two wildly different, like world, not I want to say worldviews, but perspectives. And so my research deals with how these worldviews are encompassed, like how they are, exposed, and how they also attribute to how we come to understand like world politics, American politics, so on and so forth. So I was just thinking, I was in the middle of like it was. I do my best thinking at night, and so I was doing a research proposal, a thesis proposal to pitch it to my advisor, and I just got to thinking of like all of like the wide catalyst of friends that I have, and just, of course I had to think about my bud from Vermont, so I thought you're the perfect person to ask.
I, school this conversation we had. There's a group of us. At the game hall. We just played basketball or something,
Yeah.
and we were talking about food because we were eating, and I was trying to describe to you guys poppy seed chicken, which my mom makes, and my my grandmother makes, and you guys had no idea what I was talking about, and I probably didn't do a great job explaining it. But you guys had you grew up with much different food than I did, and it was just that was like a light bulb moment for me, where I was like, no, people really live different lives, and it sounds simple to say, but to really understand it is another level.
Mhm. So I mean, I think that kind of like begs the larger question, the elephant in the room. You're running for state rep. Talked about this for a long time now. Um, so I'm curious, like to the question, like how has changing information environments defined as like, yeah, let's back up. I digress. Let's back up a little. Let's like define what I mean when I say the information environment. So like there's a large literature in public opinion, like a sub branch of political science, because public opinion encompasses many other social science disciplines and STEM disciplines as well. But the argument is essentially posited by Zeller. And essentially, he's positing that, like, okay, individuals form their opinions about politics based upon the information environments that they live in, such that, again, to the example that I used earlier, I am from Virginia, so in theory, his theory would posit that a black person from Virginia forms their opinions about their experiences in the information environment that is Virginia. He even goes on to say that um, it gets even granular to the point like if you're from like a specific town or county or city, your opinions are also based on that specific town, county, or city. So we were just talking about, prior to this, we were talking about like your ventures in Idaho. So like I felt like you can attest that you've lived, in what, three places now? Yeah, three or four places now. So like how arguably I think, it's safe to say that like your information environments have changed. And so like I do wonder like how has that I guess, kind of like changed like your substantive opinions on things about politics? Um, and relative to how they were when you were in Vermont, like growing up in Vermont, and like, do you think that would be an asset to you while you run for state rep?
Yeah, it's a huge asset just to me in my everyday life. I feel like
Yeah.
um, I'm in this like debate. You know, there's like nature versus nurture, and I kind of lean on the nurture side. Like I think we are products of the environments that we're in and
Hmm.
that we're surrounded by. Um, and so yeah, I'm a Vermonter like through and through, and I grew up there. I was my first 18 years of life there, and then every college break in between, I was back there as soon as I could be. And my worldview is shaped, with that in mind. But I knew I wanted to leave the state to see something else and to have new experiences. Um, and in college, I had a million of them that I'm forever grateful for. Just the ability to meet people from different countries or different states or different races, backgrounds, everything has been tremendously valuable. And now that I've spent a year in Idaho, it's kind of another step of the same development. The West is very different from the East. Idaho is very different from Vermont or Virginia. And I've just met different people. And I think in the political lens, I think it's helped me a lot. I think I've always believed this, but now I know it to be true. Like people come to the beliefs that they hold rationally. Whether their beliefs themselves are rational is another question, but like you come to the things you believe the same way I come to the things I believe. The stimulus is just different along the way. So I think that helps me a lot because it allows me to give people humanity. Like if I know someone I disagree with, has come to their beliefs in a rational way, then we can look each other in the eye and, have an honest conversation. I think when we forget that in our national politics and even in our towns and communities, we think people are, you know, their lived experiences aren't valuable or, they're enemies or evil or something that's not rational like us. We we kind of start to go into these tribes and we lose the humanity that we rely on.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point. You touched on nature versus nurture. There's this, I don't know if you read it. This is an article by David Lake called "The Escape from the State of Nature." It's very interesting. It kind of relates more to world politics, but he does essentially he posits the argument that like everything can't just be described by just pure chaos. There has to be some sense of like rationality behind it. Like individuals are making rational decisions. In this context, he's talking about foreign affairs, but still very much in line with the same argument you make. Um,
Well, what do you think? You have come from, a different place than I have, and now you find yourself in new environments, pursuing your master's degree. How have your environment shaped you?
I would say that my information environment has changed me more. I would say moderately. I feel like I've always had more or less liberal aligned views. There are certain views, obviously, that I hold that would argue be more conservative. Um, but I would have to say for me, I also do come from rural America as well. Obviously, rural Virginia looks vastly different than rural Vermont. Um, in the county where I born in only you ever saw was black and white people. Then I go 101 miles up the road, and now I'm in Northern Virginia at George Mason, and all these people from literally all over the world and all other states. And now I'm like, oh, this is like vastly interesting. I'm not used to like intermingling and like interacting with people from different socioeconomic backgrounds and like let alone out the country, right? So it just for me, it's I think maybe it is somewhat similar to you because for me it was more so like I didn't realize people ate, what did you call it? Poppy seed chicken. Didn't even know what that was. I,
Catfish until I got to college. Yeah,
yeah, hopefully it didn't disappoint. I,
it's great.
I always assumed that, again, a black person in Virginia is the same as a black person anywhere, right? Same can be said about white Americans. I just always assumed that a white person in Vermont would be no different than a white person in Virginia or New York or Massachusetts. So I didn't think often about how people are different depending upon the region of the United States that they live in. And for me, honestly, because again, like growing up in a small town, being raised in a small town, my family like only ever living in rural America. Um, I never thought like how big the country actually is until I got to Mason. I was like, wow, like the United States is huge. Yeah, yeah,
And when you drive across it, then you realize it's really huge.
yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I
I
can only
think,
imagine Idaho to Vermont.
yeah,
Yeah, it's crazy,
I
man.
think maybe this point that we're on is the most important here. Like, the more I see and the more people I meet, the less I have to assume. Like, I think you use the word assume, and I think that's a good word. Like, you know, I don't have to assume what a black person from rural Virginia is like because I know one. And that's not to say everyone is the same,
Hmm.
but me knowing you informs what I know about people and about places.
Yeah,
And I don't have to assume what the people living in Boise, Idaho are experiencing because I've lived there and
yeah, yeah,
I know somewhat what their life is like.
yeah. Mhm.
And just little bits and pieces that I'm collecting from all kinds of people. And I think that's really helpful in the information era that we live in today, where online anybody can say anything about anything.
Mhm.
And politicians love that ability to be able to say anything about anyone. Um, and so I hear a lot from politicians about maybe groups of people or about places. And it's nice to be able to say, hold up, actually, I know that's not true,
Yeah.
because I know those people and I know they're not criminals or bad people or
So,
incapable
yeah,
of living in America. Like,
yeah, yeah. It's crazy. Um, yeah, no, I think that's incredibly valuable. To your point, like not having to assume anymore, because now, though you may not know, it's more so like you know now what you didn't know before, if that makes sense, right? And I think that's also kind of what Mason taught me. When you're around like this, a melting pot, so that is the DC, Maryland, Virginia metropolitan area. Um, you come to realize like all the things that you thought you knew before, you really didn't before. At least for me, that was my experience, right? I graduated high school in suburbs of Richmond, Virginia. And even then, like when I moved from South Hill, my hometown in the middle of nowhere, to Richmond, my environment didn't really change that much. The suburbs honestly weren't that much different, aside from now having a Chick-fil-A. Nothing really changed substantively, right? And so it wasn't until like I changed like my environment like completely, and I'm like interacting with people, professors. I think Dr. Nunez is originally from like Argentina, for example, right? Like just learning from him, a methodologist literally originating from, if I'm incorrect in my geography, Argentina is the southernmost country, the country closest to Antarctica. I feel like literally opposite sides of the world, and yet here we are in this moment. Him obviously as my teacher, me obviously as a student, but like completely opposite sides of the world. But yet here we are meeting at this one place. And so it just kind of instilled in me that you can learn from anyone, right? Literally learn from anyone, no matter their background, where they come from, what they do for work, etc. You can learn from anyone. And I think those are things that both kind of hit home for both of us. You touched on things that obviously I would hope that our friends would have, taught you catfish, fried catfish, and you taught in turn taught me some things that I also didn't know. Obviously chicken, right? So I, yeah, I think the context of the information environment and its relevance to understanding politics, especially now when we're in this like deeply polarized environment and in this state of contentious partisan politics, I think that is very much important to like meet people where they are, right? Instead of just assuming, everything about one another. Like get to know one another, you know. So yeah. When you come back to Vermont and you're like, going more in on your campaign, it's very community based. So is there like anything that you want to like hit home with? Uh, given all these like lived experiences that you have now.
There's a lot of people like me, I would say, who, grew up in Vermont, went elsewhere, and then come
Okay.
home.
You do.
And there's a lot of people who, like my brother, who grew up there and lives there today.
Yeah.
Um, and I think that just says a lot about Vermont. Like, half the people never want to leave, and half the people, when they do leave, they want to come back.
Yeah.
It's just an amazing place. It's really, really special. And you got to come up and see it. Um, what,
Again.
two summers ago you came
Yeah.
up?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
fun.
It was amazing.
What was your favorite memory?
Well, what was that mountain that we hiked? That was awful.
We hiked up Mount Pisgah on Lake
Yeah, yeah,
Willoughby,
yeah, yeah.
overlooking Lake Willoughby, Northeast Kingdom.
Um, that was probably the best part of the trip. It was beautiful in all contexts. It was just beautiful. The hike, though, you just when you think you get close, you just realize how much further you actually have to go. Yeah, but no, it was a good time. It was I actually that was my first time in Vermont. I have to say that I've told you this too. I fell in love with the state. Um, I'm a outdoorsy person myself. So the fact that there was just so much to do outside, like all the time. Yeah.
Business of attracting residents. So just keep that
We've
in the
talked about
future.
that as well. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, no, I'm really excited to get back. And I think the campaign is going to be really good because I'm excited to get out and just talk with Vermonters and talk
yeah,
with neighbors. And that's what I love, and that's what I'm good at. And you know, we like it's great to meet people who are different and to have different experiences, but it's also great to like get home and just talk with the people who have lived a similar life as you and
yeah.
and understand things like shared values and stuff. So I'm super excited for that. And we have a lot of pressing challenges. Um, there's a lot going on in Washington that is leaking into our state, and there's a lot on the state level that needs addressing, whether it's housing costs, education, healthcare, all these things, young people leaving the state. Uh, so these are issues I'm excited to get involved with, and they're issues I've been researching and understanding for a while, and speaking with Vermonters about, and I'm excited to do that more. Just get out, knock on people's doors, talk to them, see where they're at, what they think, and how they think we should proceed. Because if I'm elected, my job is to represent the people, and so I'm
It's
excited to
interesting here.
know what they think.
No, I think it's interesting, and I think that's great to hear. Um, in relation to my graduate studies, I took a class on political representation last semester. Loved it. Honestly, out of all the classes that I took, that and statistics course I took as well. I think those are the classes that I have honestly gotten the most out of my graduate career thus far. Um, and in the representation course, it's interesting because you're running for state rep of your district, correct?
Yep, 3 times.
But you also describe this thing of what scholars call, I butcher the word, so forgive me, gyroscopic representation or gyroscopic representation. Forgot which. However, you're comfortable with pronouncing it. And it's like individuals who like congressmen at the state and local level, or legislatures at the state and local level, excuse me, who basically like represent people who are outside of their district. So such that obviously, a senator represents their entire state. Congressmen and women represent their like constituencies in their district, right? But yet, for example, and again, I'll use a populist here. You'll have like Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett representing Texas 30, but then you have like people like her district. Then you have people like men, women, children, etc. Like feel as if she's representing them in Texas as a whole, though she's not even their representative, right?
Yeah, people from elsewhere like
Exactly,
your message and view her as their representative.
exactly. So that's how like um, that gyroscopic representation works. Again, I butcher the words, forgive me.
It's a new
Um,
word for me. So
so I say this to say it because you hit home a lot on Vermonters, 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 Vermonters. For you, you're synonymizing your district with like Vermonters itself, right? I use Jasmine Crockett here again, just for like again, it's just easier. For her, she'll repeatedly say Texas 30, like repeatedly say Texas 30. Yeah, obviously she's intuitively aware that she knows that other people feel represented by her, though obviously it doesn't work like that, right? And again, this is just a question for you because I think like that really just hits home. I don't even think it's a question. I think it just really hits home like how community based Vermont is because you're synonymizing as well. Like you're not just you're running obviously to represent the individuals in your district, right? But you also acknowledge very well like this isn't just about my district. This is also about like my state as a whole. I'm running in purpose and service for not just my community, but also for the love of my state. And I honestly think that just really hits home to the love you have for Vermont, and I think that says a lot about like how community oriented Vermont is.
yeah, absolutely. In some of my travels, I've been in other states, and um, people, I don't know if people view themselves as like Idahoans per
Yeah,
se. Some people do, some people don't. Some people are like,
yeah,
I'm from Idaho, but I don't like
yeah.
this isn't working for me.
I don't claim
Right?
it. Yeah,
Yeah, Vermonters are Vermonters. Like we love being Vermonters. And so when I'm talking about my district, Heartland, Windsor, West Windsor, these are Vermonters. And they share a community with everyone in the state, but they also share some of the same struggles, whether it's housing, healthcare, like I said before. These are statewide issues, and I'm running for office. So I'm going to keep saying Vermonters, and that's
you should.
partially a reflection of how I view myself.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, you should.
whenever I go anywhere else, my like first item is I'm from Vermont in a conversation because it's what I'm most proud of, and it's really who I view myself as.
Yeah. No, but like you should. That is just a testament to the salience of like state identity that Vermonters have. Um, and I will say this again, the information environment. Prior to meeting you, and again, this could also be in relation to my own like ethnic identity. I did not know like people like from other states. Like my heritage runs deep in Virginia. Like this is the like state that my like family has always known since time immemorial. But like we'll never just consider like I've never heard anyone in my family just be like, oh yeah, I'm Virginian. They'll be like, I live in Virginia, I'm from Virginia, etc. You asked earlier, where am I from? Virginia. But like for me, that's just like a statement. I don't think and though again, like my heritage quite literally runs back to 1707. So it's like, if anything, I am Virginian. I just don't think of it in the same way you think of yourself as you like yourself as a Vermonter, right? And so, like, prior to meeting you, I had no idea people like consider themselves Vermonters or will even use at the granular level Bostonians or well, okay, we've all heard of the New Yorker, right? Come on, we've heard of that. But like Vermonters, like North Carolinians, South Carolinians, Georgians, no, I haven't. And that's never once like the salience of that is being like as an identity is never once crossed my mind. Again, there is a large literature on the salience of national identity. I was actually reading an article yesterday and into today by my advisor at Duke, Dr. Rachel Myrick, who's phenomenal. Where she's essentially was doing some work in 2021 on like do external threats unify or divide, and one of the theories that she posits is that like okay, as the salience of national identity increases, we should see a reduction in polarization in partisan politics. Obviously, we don't observe that, but and part that kind of goes into like the economist nature of what it means to be American, like nationally. But then like you have individuals like you, where it's like, well, being American for you is somewhat nearly synonymous with being, a Vermonter, right? And so it's like it really just touches and hits home like all these different points that I'm like reading now and like engaging with literature more. And yeah, I guess I just never thought about like, okay, like he's a proud, Vermonter. For me, it was always just like a geographic indicator. He's from there.
Yeah,
He's lived there. I live in Virginia. I am from Virginia. Though my family has been here since the 1700s, and I don't feel as if the same way you do about Vermont. Even though I do love Virginia, I do.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. That's very different. How did you say that? Like, I'm from Virginia versus I'm a Vermonter.
yeah,
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 that's
yeah,
two different things.
yeah,
Well, maybe you could like write me into a textbook someday as a case study for state identity in politics.
yeah. Nah, definitely will have to. 'Cause this is definitely. I'm just thinking about this now, and I'm like, I've never thought of it like that before.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah,
think we have to be super cognizant of our identities in politics. Like everyone brings so many identities into politics, and usually it's pretty subconscious. In this conversation, I'm a Vermonter, I'm a man, I'm white, I'm a young person, like just off the top of my head.
yeah,
And all of those are contributing to how I see the world, um, and how I even have this conversation. And most of the time, I think we kind of just walk around and don't consider these things and, consume information without looking at the lenses, basically. But the
yeah.
lenses are super important. Our identities are super important. Have you been studying anything on that?
Yeah, so we more or less put ourselves in like subfields. I'm sure you're obviously familiar with because the Shar School professors did the same thing. You have scholars who study American politics, comparative politics, international relations, methodology. So I do study international relations because I am concerned with world politics writ large. I've tried to like derail that for this conversation since this is more like the America's perspective. But though, like I'm still seeing parallels, right? Again, that just goes again to the economist nature that is American politics. But I also do study racial and ethnic politics. So I do largely study identity, right? Um, and as we're like talking more, I'm starting to wonder, like thinking on like the news that I've read. Mayor Wu, Boston, um, she won her re-election or nomination, and she hit home. I remember watching like her, like I don't know if it was her acceptance speech, victory speech. I really forgot which. It was one of those things where you watch for like a good 2 minutes, then you have to like put your phone down and go. Um, for the 2 minutes that I watched, she hit home like what it meant to be a part of Boston, like Boston's community. Obviously, I don't. I've heard like varying perspectives depending on what ethnic identity you represent in America, your experiences about what it meant to be a Bostonian. But that's what she hit home with. And again, she's a person of color, right? So like, I do wonder, like, as we see, and again, this is the research question, as we see polarization or partisan politics increase, do we also see the salience of state identity increase, right? Because on one hand, you have on one argument, you see the increased, how do you say, like the median of what it means to be like American is like widening, right? Instead of like condensing.
Yeah.
Whereas now, like what it means to be like nationally, American, that's like, well, that definition is widening because it means so many different things. So I do wonder, like as you see, like polarization and partisanship increases in part because of the rhetoric and the partisanship between the two parties increases. Do you see Americans more so now identifying similar to yourself? Like I'm a Vermonter, like Michelle Wu, for example. Um, she emphasized being a Bostonian. Donnie, for example. I mean, the tale of the New Yorker is like obviously like this is not new, but like again, like he is a direct representation of like like he is a New Yorker. Yeah, we could go on down the list, right? So I do wonder, like, do we see the salience of how people identify themselves? Do we see people more identifying themselves as Virginian? I mean, I've never seen so many of my relatives now more engaged with local politics. It was always about national politics, but now like they're concerned about you know who they were concerned about Attorney General, for example. Virginia, 'cause that was a whole thing. Then now they're concerned about who's on the board of education. Like I'm like, you did not think about this 15 years ago. So anyway, it just makes me wonder like this how the salience of it all is going to like panel out, right? As we see either increase.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting, and maybe I can offer a hypothesis, an
Yeah.
early hypothesis. I think the definition of what it means to be American has always been wide, but it is widening.
Yeah.
This is a country that had a diverse level of immigration from the very beginning.
Mhm.
Um, but I think the point on polarization is the big one. Like as as the federal government and as our country is less responsive to the people and to the demands of the people and less able to provide for people and elicit change,
Yeah.
people are identifying more with states and seeking to, you know, put influence into states,
Yeah.
um, which may do a better job at meeting their needs. Just an idea.
No, that's interesting. And again, like I can tell Dookie is really like ingrained their training into me because every time you say something, I think of a whole other thing now. To the same point though, it's more of like a feedback loop. We hear about like a policy feedback loop. Like, does the policy make opinion or does the opinion make policy, right? But what I think what we're discussing is also like an identity, some sort of like identity feedback loop per se. And I'll say more on this. For example, because on the one hand, you have like, okay, so as polarization increases, you do also see more states like identifying like Governor Westmore of Maryland, for example, like really honing in like what it means to be, a Marylander, right? You see states identify Texas, for example. You see them like really trying to solidify like what is a Texan? Look at Talarico and look at was it is it Paxton now, right? It's Paxton, now, right? Yeah. Like we're seeing races, and we're also seeing like like candidates who are in office now, like redefining what it means to be Texan. What does it mean to be a my governor? Abigail Spanberger, the first woman governor in Virginia history, right? Redefining what it means to be Virginian, right? Obviously, Virginia is a weird case because we have Northern Virginia, Southern Virginia, who are like polar opposites, but that's a whole other thing. Um, but I do wonder, like, as we're seeing, are we seeing these incumbents as a direct result of polarization because of this increased salience? For example, one might have the argument that, well, again, Virginia is a special case. I do wonder, like, would we not have had a our first, woman governor, for example, if we had not seen this increased partisanship and polarization between parties? Is it because like Virginians at writ large are trying to like redefine or like identify more with what it means to be Virginian that they're like, hey, like, being Virginian could mean, Glenn Youngkin could also mean Ralph Northam, but now it could mean Abigail Spanberger, right? Same can be said about Westmore. Same can be said about Mandani. The same can be said about, like, this makes sense. So I'm just wondering, like, is this like a loop here? Like, would the electorate at the national level, congressman, president, etc. In my view, the way I'm thinking of this, if they care about state politics the way we're seeing Trump throw around his endorsements, then in my view, in my opinion, it would seem that the incentive would be to reduce partisanship and reduce polarization because I would think that, and again, in my view, it's having the opposite effect because you're having people have like increased salience with their locality. Look at Alberta in Canada. This is a whole other country. Look at Alberta in Canada, right? Like they're quote unquote trying to become independent, quote unquote, right?
I
Yeah,
don't think
right.
it'll pass, but they're going
I don't think I'm best.
to food from Canada.
Partisan politics, right? Canada also is subjugated to partisanship and polarization. Not to the degree that America is, but like definitely so. And so like again, it just kind of like ties back into the question like, are we is it if this is having like if this is not having the intended consequences, be it whether they know it or not, like and if like I said, rational actors like Trump, because you brought on the state of rationalism, such that he cares about state politics and state outcomes, it would be, in my view, he would be incentivized, in fact, to reduce polarization and partisanship because you're saying increase salience in state identity rather than what matters most, national identity. Not saying that both can't, matter at the same time, but arguably in a context where all 50 states fall underneath the union, you know, American, right? So I don't know. I just do wonder, like, as we see time progress, and I think the midterms will be a testament to this test. Um, though not empirically, like how we see turnout in state elections in years past, how we see turnout in national elections compared to years past, so on and so forth. So who knows?
I think all politics are local, in my opinion. And
Yeah,
something that happens in Washington can trigger something in a local race, like,
agreed.
and even totally if they're disconnected, like the the Trump administration is taking, you know, really radical steps across many policy areas, whether it's, you know, reducing taxes for the wealthy.
Yeah,
So Trump reduces taxes for the wealthy. Now in Vermont, there's a stronger movement to tax wealthy Vermonters, and they're directly related.
yeah.
And it's the push and pull, like you're talking about. Democrats more so, but people in general know right now Washington is not there to solve their problems, so they're looking to the states to do so.
This last point you touched on earlier, you touched on responsiveness. And again, I took a class on representation, so I also find there's responsiveness is also exists on a spectrum. There's policy responsiveness. There's um, descriptive responsiveness or in descriptive representation, etc. But as an incumbent, what is responsiveness? Like when you tell me what's responsiveness, and then I'll tell you what like the state of the literature actually says on what is responsiveness. Like what is that?
As a policymaker, people say they want something and you deliver it.
Okay. Um. So okay, is it still
Or they say
responsive?
they don't want something and you get rid of it.
Is it still responsiveness? Because here's the be all question. Is it still responsiveness if obviously you know that everyone in you said was it three towns? Three towns? That obviously you know that everyone in all three towns are not going to vote for you. That's just like that's intuitive, right? But say if you're still elected, right? Say you're elected because you obviously still get the majority vote, et cetera, right? Um, is it still responsiveness if those who did not vote for you, because say for instance I'm a Vermonter, right? And you represent me, but I didn't vote for you because we vary on our policy stances. It could be that I'm just a Republican, you're a Democrat, and for me that's enough, depending on in this context who I am, right? And so say for instance, like all the votes that or all the times you vote, on behalf of my district, I don't agree with the way you vote. Are you still being responsive to me? That's the question. Is that still
Because my goal will be to represent everyone, not just people who vote for me. Um,
yeah.
and so I think responsiveness in public office, I can't guarantee that I'm going to vote some way that you will agree with every single time. That just won't happen.
Yeah.
Um, but I can guarantee that I can take your input and truly consider it, and then make a decision with as much input as I can receive.
So, which lovely answer. So, I do wish, obviously, you're early on in your career, but I do wish more politicians would actually like read more like research. They tend to read more like policy briefs, etc., for obvious reasons, because research, it's this whole thing that we're struggling with in the academy. Like, how do we like make research digestible so it's actually
Like,
like helping somebody? Yeah. Because like to your point, I would tell you this. And again, not to like, who am I to like give you advice or whatever, but I will tell you this: most like, yeah, exactly. As a friend, I will tell you this: constituents care representation and policy responsiveness. And that's not to say that you vote. That's not to say you vote consistently on what they want all the time. But anything other than, because this is just the reality of like how the average voter feels, and like this is work has been done on this since like the '70s. John Aldrich, Alison Noel, Miller and Stokes, Robert Dahl. I could just go down the list. Honestly, that's just five, right? And so what everyone is finding is like people care a lot about them being represented in policy representation, policy responsiveness. Anything other than that feels like fluff, right? And so like when you feel as if the person that is representing you on, I'm just gonna keep using Congress. When you feel as if the person that's representing you in Congress is not voting at all in any way, shape, or form in policy matters that you agree with, then you feel you're not being represented in Congress. To give you a direct example, well, he's leaving Congress in like January. Senator Tillis of North Carolina, right? The reason why he's been so widely popular in North Carolina between moderate, obviously within the Republican Party, moderates, and even like moderate Democrats as well, is because he is a vastly inconsistent policy voter in that like his vote does not consistently align all the time with the Republican Party, more so with the Republican Party than the Democratic Party. Yeah, naturally, of course, right? But like the fact that he does not vote consistently all the time with Republicans gives the moderate Democrat in North Carolina, because the average North Carolinian voter actually they are moderates in both parties. You have your outliers, of course, but it gives the moderate Democrat, hope that like okay, like maybe he will represent me at some point when it matters, right? If so, again, that's kind of like akin to like purple state politics. But I will say this, like I said, I say all this to say is like being the inconsistent party voter is actually more advantageous to like purple state politicians, which when there aren't many. But arguably now, I would wager that's even more advantageous than like purple politicians all writ large, nationally, state level, local politics, etc. That's how people feel most like represented. Like that's how you kind of like decrease the veil that is partisanship.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
yeah,
and unfortunately, it's a disadvantage in the way that our elections are set up for
exactly.
politician to cross party lines every now and again to represent a majority of constituents, Republican and Democrat, and to represent the middle because you have to run in a primary every 2 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And our primaries are partisan. And so there's
Yeah.
this constant battle of every 4 years, you're not Republican enough or you're not Democrat enough. And so we're sending people to Washington who are more representative of the fringes than of the entire population of each
Yeah.
state or each district
Yeah.
because we have partisan primaries.
No, I agree. I mean, we literally just saw that last night, and we've been saying that for like the last 2 weeks. To finish
Exactly.
up, um, arguably what we're observing is divergence from policy representation. Now we're observing more people are carrying, at least I don't know more so in the Democratic Party yet, because they've kind of always honed in on descriptive representation. That's essentially like you care about people in office that align with either how you look, how you think, etc. Like, like now, like in the Republican Party, in Texas at least, and maybe in Louisiana, people are identifying more with Trump's ideology. That's descriptive for them. They don't want just any Republican. They want the Trump Republican. And so like now we're seeing an increased salience again in descriptive representation. Cornyn was the what 4 decade senator of Texas or something like that. Point being, like both are part of the Republican Party, but obviously do vary on the ideological spectrum. Both being Republican, like obviously Cornyn maybe now is viewed as the more like how do you say, like I will say Paxton is viewed as the more like hardline Republican, right? That in and of itself is like people are identifying more of like the hardline Republican, the more hardline Republican that is like either praised by Trump or Trump aligned. That in and of itself is an ideology. Like that in and of itself is like an ideological like distinction. It's descriptive because this person may not like pass policy that benefits you directly, but you don't really care about the policy that's benefiting you directly. You could be a poor. I don't want to name a geographic, but you could be like a very poor person in the state, right? And your representative cannot pass any policy that benefits you and your pockets whatsoever. You care more about the more ideologically aligned conservative vis-a-vis Trump than you do the conservative that may actually have or maybe have had. I don't know Cornyn's record. You know, your best interest for Texans were large. I can only assume that he's had more experience than Paxton, of course, but that's the point. People are caring more about.
Scandalous divorces.
Yeah,
Paxton has much more experience.
yeah. So
Well, I don't think we can totally distill Trumpism today.
no, you can't. Hence why
But
should.
maybe another conversation we can get more into it.
Yeah.
Um, I think we should probably wrap up. This has been a great conversation. Any last thoughts you want to leave us, CJ?
Good luck, man, on your election. I know you're gonna do great things. And if you take away anything, from this conversation, please remember ask yourself this all the time. I guess even like when you do win, what is responsiveness? What is representation? If you can't answer that, then please come find me again.
Okay, great. That's good advice. Thank you. Well, thanks for joining today. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah.
And we'll have to get you to Vermont sometime soon.
Of course, of course. All right, man.